You're locked on to Hans Olsen and Scotty Chin. That's right. Yeah! On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Well, I'm really excited and very honored to have this next guest in studio with me, and it's somebody that I've heard and listened to and know very well of over the years here in the state of Utah. It's Greg Skordas here in studio with us. He is going to be starting a new show on KSL.
Yeah, we're starting Inside
9th.
Sources June 9th, taking over for Dave Nujanovic, and I'm going to be working with Harley Richardson, the 9 to 12 slot, starting in a couple weeks.
Well, Greg, I mean, this is nothing new to you. You've done some media. So.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit. It's been fun to be on the same team as Hans Olsen.
Yeah, you know, that's the key, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we all get in this foxhole together.
That's right.
Try to fight through some of these stories, and you were the first name that came to my mind, and big thanks to Lloyd. He did a fantastic job of tracking you down. He had to go through 4 or 5 different people to get to you because you're an important person.
Well, I'm here now, so
yeah.
I'm captive now.
We've got you, and excited to kind of jump into this case with you because I am not familiar with the legalities. Very familiar with sports, but the legalities really get murky for me. And I want to start with this. Why civil and not legal when talking about this case coming down on Jake Retzlaff?
That's a good question. In fact, I asked the same thing. Why isn't this being prosecuted criminally? And if you read the civil lawsuit, you can see that the alleged victim here, and this is the case against Jake Retzlaff, did at least contact initially the Provo Police Department, and there was some attempt to take this criminally. You would always expect, Hans, a victim in a case like this to pursue it criminally first. So I'm assuming, just reading between the lines, because this is alleged to have occurred 18 months ago, that the prosecutors, the Utah County Attorney's Office, decided not to charge the case criminally, and so this is now her only remedy.
Why would they decide not to pursue?
It looks just, even from her own statements here in this complaint, and I'm reading the civil complaint, she was reluctant to come forward. She was reluctant to disclose the name of the supposed perpetrator. There's probably not a lot of evidence given that time delay, and I just assume that the Utah County Attorney's Office and the Provo Police Department, both of which, Hans, are pretty aggressive. They're not ones to just walk away from a case because it involves a high-profile person, that they decided they couldn't prevail, that there wasn't enough evidence to prevail in this case. So you look at the forensic evidence. You look at when you have a sex case, it's let's face it, it's a he said, she said. So to corroborate what she said, you would want some forensic evidence, DNA, signs of bruising, signs of injury, signs of something like that. And given the time between the alleged incident and the report, there may not have been much evidence. And I just assumed that they just didn't have enough case to charge it criminally. Now, the civil case it has a little bit lesser of a standard. If you sue someone civilly, you have to prove your case by what we call a preponderance of the evidence. In other words, you have a better case than the other side. But in a criminal case, the standard of proof is much higher. We call it proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So a prosecutor has to say, I have to be 95% sure I'm going to win this case before they can file it. Whereas a civil attorney is going to look at it and say, I think I have a pretty good case. I think I have a better than average case.
Are civil cases handled in front of a jury?
They can be, and in this case, they did request a jury. So that's a good question. It's like a criminal case because they have the right. In this case, there was a jury demanded, and it would be a jury of 8. In criminal cases, they have to be unanimous. Civil cases, I think it's like 2/3, so you need 6 out of the 8, something like that. Ultimately, a judge oversees the case, but in both cases, you would have a right to a jury trial.
So just because they requested it, does that mean they will get it, or is there some processes of making that decision?
The request is enough. They can always say, we don't want a jury trial. But in a case like this, just from my experience, the money, if you're looking at a money case, you're going to get more from a jury than from a judge who's going to look at it very analytically, where a jury can be more upset or more angry at the situation, or one way or the other. But you're not going to get a $1 million verdict. Not that I'm saying this case is worth $1 million by any means, from a judge, as likely as you are from a jury who could be more impassioned from what they're hearing.
So at this point, the entire point of the civil case is to receive money.
period. That's all it's about. Yeah, this is a civil suit. They've alleged several causes of action, assault, battery, those type of things. But ultimately, it's to collect money and nothing more.
How long typically does a civil case like this take to activate, pursue, and close?
Okay, so it's activated now. It was filed yesterday. They filed an amended complaint today, and I was sort of comparing them, and I can't see the difference, but there's something they filed differently. I don't even think Retzlaff's been served yet as attorney. So we're in the very early stages, Hans. And a case like this, to get to trial before it'll see a jury, probably not even in 2026. You're probably thinking of 18 to 24 months. A criminal case, they move on a faster track because the Constitution has that whole speedy trial thing. We don't have that in civil cases. And in criminal cases, it's because a person might be in jail. There's no reason to wait 2 years. But criminal cases always trump civil cases when you're in court and there's judges are trying to set trials. So a civil case is going to be not a low priority, but a lower priority in terms of getting to trial than a criminal case.
Now, one of the higher profile cases that I've ever heard of a legal trial and then a civil trial was O.J. Simpson.
Exactly.
And it is possible to lose a legal trial and win a civil because that's exactly what happened in O.J.'s case.
And it's exactly for the reason we talked about a minute ago, because the standard of proof in the criminal case is so high, the jury couldn't reach it. But they didn't have to get that much evidence in a civil case to win. You know what I mean? So in a criminal case, man, you have to have the unanimous jury find there's no doubt that this occurred. In a civil case, hey, we'll take 2/3 and did it more likely than not occur. Does that make sense?
That does.
So it's a lower standard of proof. That's why you could win one and not the other.
Okay, so we saw O.J. with a legal first and then a civil.
Right.
How often do you see a civil and then a legal?
Rarely. And in this case, just specifically talking about this case, in as much as it's alleged to have occurred, I think in November of 23.
That's correct.
You would think if they were going to file the criminal end of it, they would have done so by now. This state's clearly had enough time and evidence and wherewithal to pursue it criminally. My guess is the fact that they haven't means that they probably won't. But they still could. They still could. It would just seem that that's unlikely.
So, Greg, what are the chances? By the way, Greg Skordas in with us. Excited to have him here. Did you say 43 years in practicing?
Longer than you've been born, probably. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
I've been a lawyer for a long time.
I was just starting life.
There you
at
go.
that point, but that's incredible. Congratulations to you for a very long and successful career. And I know that you've probably had many cases like this on your desk over those years. So
yeah.
It's great to get your insight, and so excited for you to start your new show on KSL June 9th. You're going to be hearing from Greg Skordas, and I'm excited about that. You and I talked a little bit about this. What are the chances that this filing that came down yesterday caught Jake Retzlaff, Kalani Sitake, and BYU flat-footed?
0%. Okay. I would assume that a good civil lawyer, and I don't know these lawyers that are representing the victim in this case, the alleged victim, would have reached out to at least Retzlaff and said, hey, we've got this case. We're coming down the pike. Do you want to settle? Do you want to talk to us? Do you want to try to resolve it? So that day's probably long since passed. And I would also assume that because the Provo Police Department investigated it, that there had to be some level of referral to the Title IX people at BYU, which would have triggered a call to the coach. So I assume that nobody was caught flat-footed. They may have been disappointed that it ultimately was filed, thinking maybe it wouldn't be. But I think people were probably on the guard for it.
So I also, just reading through the report, I see that there were some accusations of the Provo Police Department giving advice on how she should potentially proceed. How much trouble could they potentially be in this civil situation?
Let me just say this. I have practiced for 43 years, and I've worked with the Provo Police Department, both as a prosecutor at Salt Lake County and as a defense attorney, so I've been on the opposite side of them. I don't believe that they would have treated it the way that's being articulated here. I don't believe that the Provo Police Department said, hey, this is you're never going to get anywhere and there's no justice. I think their words were really, I mean, I haven't answered your question and I apologize. I just find that hard to believe. So I don't think the Provo Police Department's going to be in trouble. I think they investigated it, but based on the allegations that she's raising in her complaint, there's going to be an internal investigation and to determine what level of care they did give her, what level of investigation they gave this case. But Provo Police Department's pretty aggressive. They don't walk away from a case because it has something to do with the BYU football program or something like that. I just don't find that to be credible. But again, those are allegations. We'll let it sort out.
And they did announce the attorney representing Retzlaff is Mark Bout. I don't know if you know Mark, but he did make some initial statements saying he is a nice young man. He's also factually innocent, and we look forward to proving that innocence. Good opening comments from an attorney?
I've used it myself many times. I mean, that's what you say. And I use that in the context of a criminal case. When somebody's charged criminally, what do you say? Hey, I've got a good person here. We're looking forward to our day in court. We want a jury or judge to decide this case. So I think he's saying the right things right now, looking at the case and not wanting to disclose their entire evidence right now. There's no reason to do that. She's disclosed everything. This complaint is very, very forthcoming. It describes in very detailed, statements about the alleged assault. Retzlaff and his attorney don't have to do that yet, and they're better not to do that. They're better to do exactly what you just described, which is to say, hey, we're looking forward to our day in court.
Greg, you're great. And it was fun to finally get on air with you.
Yeah, I hope we get to do it again.
Appreciate your time. We will. As this thing proceeds, I'm sure that we'll have an opportunity to catch up with you quite a few times. And I don't know if you're ever going to bump into a sports story that you need a little bit of help.
I've done my share,
on the KSL side of things, but if you need a little bit of sports insight, I'm always here for you.
Hey, it's an honor to be with you, by the way.
It's great to be on the same team.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. There you go, Greg Skordas. His new show will be starting up on KSL June 9th. 43 years of practice. Incredible man. Appreciate his time. We'll take a quick one. We'll come back to what you may have missed and much more. That's all coming up on Hans and Scotty.